I
am
aware.
This is all the power you ever had. Now it is mine. Pity there is not more time for us.
You tell him it's open season on all suckheads.
No more clowning around! Fire alert!
Is that gasoline I smell?
No, man. No!
Welcome, everybody, to the hit podcast. I always call it a hit. One day it'll be true. The hit
Maybe
podcast.
One day.
Edging with Trash and Monk. Maybe today. My name's Monk.
Today's the day.
We've got my co-host, the regular Briantrash, and we've got our guest, Tim, aka Conquest of Dread, from a variety of places.
Yeah, from all over the show.
Yeah. Beaming in live. We're on island time right now in New Zealand.
We are. We're in archipelago, so we're in archipelago time right now.
Hell yeah.
Oh, man. I thought we were broadcasting from the Mir space station 30 years ago.
That's true.
I
That's
think
where we were.
canonically, I think that in the film that we're here to talk about, I think that the events of this film actually don't happen too far away from where I am right now. I think there's a couple times they mention it, but anyway,
I think you're right.
We'll discuss this later. We'll get into that. We'll get deep into that a little later on.
Hell yeah. So we're here to talk about virus a little bit later on, but before we get into that, I don't know, any bullshit you want to talk about, Brian? What's been going on in your life?
I've been role playing as an evil genius and Evil Genius 2 a lot recently. Plotting the AI overthrow of the world. And I think that really dovetails nicely into the movie tonight. So
hell yeah.
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. This episode brought to you by Evil Genius 2. We're not actually sponsored.
Yeah,
but
Evil Genius 2. It's probably okay to spend $3 on it.
Yeah, it's $3 worth it. There you go.
So, Genius 2, huh? Wow.
Yeah. They made a second one.
I know. I was thinking like Evil Genius 1. That's enough evil geniuses for me. But hey.
Well, there's
not for you. Not for you, I guess.
There's a whole 3 or 4 evil geniuses in Evil Genius. So that's like
I never heard of it, so I just Googled it, and the picture Evil Genius 2 World Domination, and it has this like Cuban coded dictator with perhaps a robot hand. So I mean, it sounds good already. Like, so yeah. Where's the evil guy? I mean,
there's a few characters, and they're various kinds and types of evil, quote unquote. So you gotta choose the one that you feel the most connection to, the least evil coming off of. So
I'm looking at it now. There's like a Dr. Evil kind of guy. There's a Margaret Thatcher coded character, and then a woman with a bubble on her head. So, I'm feeling like a Cuban guy. Maybe he just seems like a guy.
Yeah,
definitely.
So that looks great.
He's just a lad.
Definitely no match for the evil of Margaret Thatcher. I will say that.
But who amongst us is truly?
What about y'all? What have you been up to lately? Anything fun?
I have been fucked up temporally. I'm operating in 2 different, because first of all, on a day-by-day basis, I'm starting to go a little bit insane from working in a different time zone that I live in, and everything I do, I've got work time and I've got real time. and now I've got New Zealand time. And also, we're recording the episodes in the wrong order because this episode is going to be 2 episodes from the next one, and then we're going to record the episode before this one tomorrow, I think.
Wow, all because of time zones. All
Yep.
because of time zones. That's how that
Everything's
works.
all whacked out. It's wild. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't tell you that when when you're communicating with someone in a different time zone, that there's actually a measure of how many podcast episodes you go back or forward. When you're flying from New Zealand to Australia, you have to go back one, but yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like the week median as well, and it's just like I don't know, it's Greenwich week time. I don't know. It's a fucking mess.
Why don't they make it Greenwich nice time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? I wouldn't feel so bad about it, then flying around the equator. But yeah, interesting. Very many thoughts, many high level ideas already discussed.
Absolutely,
this evening. What have I been up to? I've been working. A lot. I've been between day job stuff, so tattooing, and then extracurricular stuff like doing like the Red Planet streams and all that kind of stuff. And then actually was it last week? Started last week, maybe the week before. I was out of town for a big symposium thing for traditional Maori tattooing, which actually, well, I was sharing a table with 2 of the people involved with the production of this movie, actually. So
that's wild.
It is wild, but it is actually just an indicator of how small the the community is, really. And especially like there's a thing in New Zealand, it's like everyone is like only a couple degrees like away from each other, and then like if you're Maori, it's like smaller, and then because we're all tattooists, it's like even smaller again, and it's just like everyone knows everyone, and we've all known each other for years, all that kind of stuff. But so anytime there is any kind of movie that has anything to do with like Maori culture or has like a character or whatever, usually it's like someone that was like directly involved or like is in the movie or like worked behind the scenes or something like that. So that happens a lot.
I hadn't heard about this movie at all until you tweeted about it, like basically a couple of weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've tweeted about it a couple times over the years because I like it. As like a purveyor of like kind of trashy kind of late night VHS horror kind of stuff, and then also just like this movie ticks a couple boxes for me, right? It's like I do have a kind of an affinity for, I generally like think of them like haunted house movies, where it's like sometimes the house is a house, sometimes the house is a boat, sometimes the house is a space station, but it's like this idea of these people that are coming into this kind of like unknown and hostile environment, and there's like a mystery, and sometimes there's a ghost or a killer or a computer virus or something like that, and they're trying to, for whatever reason, they can't leave until they've like figured out this mystery or something like that. And Virus is kind of one of those movies. It definitely is like, it's a little bit that, and it's kind of like, it has kind of like a trashy, like Scream Queen horror kind of thing going on, which I think is probably why Jamie Lee Curtis was like cast in the first place, because she's kind of the queen of that stuff. But but then my first introduction to this was actually as a kid watching it, and it would have been cool probably when it just hit video, because I remember I think I was in primary school and I was at a sleepover at a friend's house who was like, we would always get horror movies at this kid's house, and this kid was like a South African, from a South African family, who I grew up and realized they were just like insanely racist all the time.
Mm.
And I remember that because I remember watching this movie. There's this one character, Hiko, who's he's like a deckhand Maori dude, and like the dude that you know, whose house it was, he was just constantly making like the most like terrible kind of like noble savagey like racist jokes about Maori, even though like half the people there would have been like Maori or Samoan or something like that, you know. So he was just like popping out these things, and I remember at the time just being like, I don't get his, like, why is that funny? Like, you know, like you know, he was just like mimicking the mannerisms, and like there's like a couple things that the character does that are just very, you know, like stereotypically Maori things, and he was like just, you know, like, and at the time I was like, I don't get it. And then years later I was like, oh my god, like these people were like, they were so racist. Like everything, like we would go around for dinner and they'd be making jokes about like, you know, stuff back home in Africa and stuff. It's like, wow, okay. So it was like these interactions were like drilled into my head from a young age. And I think that that helped me remember this movie a lot more than any other one. Because, you know, because I would be like, that not only did I see Cliff Curtis in all his glory, you know, saying these lines or whatever, and then I got this other dude, this little asshole, like repeating the line over and over again in a ridiculous voice. And I'm just like, you know, so it's like, so I think that it, like for me, I really enjoyed it at the time because it was one of the first times I'd seen in some kind of like, you know, a genre film like this, where there had been like an actual Maori character played by a Maori actor who like looked and sounded, and like his tattoos were right, his costuming and stuff was, you know, it was like, it was legit, and it didn't look like he was kind of like someone else's idea of that, what that character might look like, you know, like he wasn't just like, yeah, this kind of like noble savage kind of, I guess, you know, like Ooga Booga jungle man, like that. He was literally like, just a dude, you know.
Just a guy working on a boat.
yeah, exactly. You know, and I think there's even like commentary on it where it's like there's another member of the crew that like just mentions at some point that they just don't understand him whatsoever, which is really funny because it's like he's literally just a dude, but it's like this guy is just like, oh man, this guy has like a tattooed face, like what the fuck is his deal? And he's like, he's a guy. Like he's just a guy.
He does kind of rule. I feel like he got kind of done dirty by the movie, to be honest.
Oh, I did. Like I think that like they didn't really give him too much time, you know, and he's kind of like, you know, he's not like a very fleshed out character, but I think that but just like having him there and it's almost kind of like if they had fully made a really ridiculous caricature, like if they had given him the Queequeg treatment, like Queequeg from Moby Dick, and if they had made him like this ridiculous noble savage kind of caricature, then the movie would, like, I would probably have less fond feelings about the movie, but just having him as just this guy that is just there on the boat. It's like, to me, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool because he can be just a guy. He doesn't have to be, you know, whatever. He doesn't have to be like some great noble warrior spirit or whatever. Like he can just be a deckhand, you know? So I kind of, I do like that. And so I think like seeing this as a kid, and also all the practical effects in this movie, which I like from a young age always loved practical effects stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I did a stint working in a props and special effects workshop when I was younger, and I just was always obsessed with that stuff. So it's funny reading old kind of contemporary reviews from the time where people are like talking about how terrible the effects are and comparing them to there's another movie, Deep Rising, that came out like just prior to this. It has similar plot points and all this kind of stuff, but is all like CG. And at the time, people were like, "Oh, like this looks like shit," because Deep Rising got that good CG, you know, which is so, I guess, like anachronistic. And you looking back on it now, it absolutely looks like shit. But the stuff in Virus, the practical effects, still holds up really well because it's just literally like, it's machines covered in bits of fake meat and like little red lights and stuff, and it's cool.
Yeah.
It looks cool. If anything, it looks better now. But
they do
so
have a few moments where like I can sort of see how like the animatronics are all like I think extremely well done, but they're like I don't know. I feel like there's been sort of like people I think are better at identifying what like looks fake about CG now than they were back in the day. Because there are movies that like I remember seeing when I was a kid that are like CG.
Yeah,
and I remember seeing them as a kid and going like, wow, this looks so lifelike. And then I go back and look at it and it looks like a PlayStation 1 cutscene.
Yeah. And I like one thing that I think is really like interesting about practical effects, and because this movie was directed by John Bruno, who is a visual effects guy. He was like he worked with James Cameron and all that kind of stuff. So he really kind of like was really clued up about that kind of thing. I think it was Phil Tippett in his workshop that actually did the special effects, but it was directed by John Bruno, who was, I think he worked on like Terminator 2 and stuff like that, so he was one of these guys, right? And so when you're working with practical effects, you have to be very conscious of like what you are putting on the screen at any given time. So this creates this dialogue between the practical effects team and the director, where they have to really consider each shot, which leads to a lot more kind of, I guess, like creativity, and I think like it leads to a lot of really ingenious kind of solutions to these problems. Whereas with CG, if you're like, oh, we can just put anything on the screen, like, I mean, there are budgeting and rendering kind of limitations and stuff, but I think like the additional kind of like problem solving of having to make something with practical effects leads to some far better imagery on screen, more iconic stuff. Like I always think about like Jurassic Park, right? So that's an era where they had just started doing like kind of decent CG, but they were still using a lot of practical effects because like they still had to be really realistic about how they applied CG and all that kind of stuff. So you've got all these like iconic shots with like where you just see part of the T-Rex, like just its feet or something like that, or even where you don't even see it, but you see like the vibrations in the cup of water and stuff like that. And then you see
and it
like
works so well for doing horror, like just
and it
turns out so much better. Yeah,
like you don't have to show the entirety of this like creature or anything like that. You can just show something that hints at it, like even like an Alien, you see like the tail coming down in the background, all that kind of stuff. But to go back to the Jurassic Park thing, if you compare that to Spielberg's like Ready Player One, where he just uses CGI to put like absolutely anything that he wants on screen with no real second thought, and it just looks like shit. It just looks like a mess. It's like there's too much going on. There's no thought. Well, like just like the framing and blocking and all that kind of stuff is just nowhere near the same level as what you see in his earlier films, where he was pushed more to really think and kind of come up with these much more interesting situations.
Kind of in like appropriate for that particular movie, though. The idea of like, let's just have whatever happen and who cares. It's very accurate.
Yeah. Just throw shit at the wall. It's just
for Ready for
all the IPs at the wall. Yeah.
The guy who wrote that book. The guy who wrote that book actually grew up in my neighborhood when I was a kid, and he had a DeLorean that he would drive around.
Of course, he fucking did. Is he the guy that wrote that poem about nerd girls?
Yes.
Oh
yeah,
God.
Nerd girls poem. It's like wow. Like what's the guy's name again?
Ernst Cline, I think is his name.
Ernst Cline. Yeah, do yourself a favor
name ever,
and pause this podcast and look up Ernst Cline nerd girl poem or some shit, and then come back so you know how bad, what we're talking about here. It's like it's like this like little incel manifesto about kind of like like this really misogynistic screed about all the pretty blonde bimbo girls sort of thing, and how he actually just really wants like
he wants his porn to be
nice
more pro women. Literally, it's about porn.
Literally.
I mean, it's pretty short. I'd be happy to perform this for the podcast.
It's kind of long. I don't know.
It's not that long.
All
It's
right, go
only
ahead.
what? Like it's not very long. Okay, here you go, dear listener. This is nerd porn auteur. I've noticed that there don't seem to be any porno movies that are made for guys like me. All the porn I've come across was targeted at beer-swilling, sports bar-dwelling alpha males. Men who like their women stupid and submissive. Men who can only get it up for monosyllabic, cock-hungry nympho. What the fuck is this? With gargantuan breasts. Why is there a line break? With the gargantuan breasts and a 3-word vocabulary, adult films are populated with these collagen-injected liposuction women, many of whom have resorted to surgery and self-mutilation in an attempt to look the way they have been told to look. These aren't real women, they're objects. And these movies aren't erotic, they're pathetic. Vacuum-headed fuck bunnies don't turn me on. They disgust me. And it's not that I'm against pornography. I mean, I'm a guy. And guys need porn. Fact. I can't believe that's a line. Just pause. Fact. What did Ben Shapiro write this?
Also, by the way, looked it up.
Fucking mic drop.
Definitely a turf from what I've been reading.
Amazing.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, no, of course it is. He's like has like a narrow idea of what a woman should be as well.
God. Very true. Very true.
Do you want to keep reading? This goes on for a while. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it goes on for a while. Like that's a little taste. Yeah.
It's a taste. You go look up the rest.
Yeah.
If we get a lot of requests, I'll do something for the Patreon where I'll go ahead and do a beautiful. I'll have music in the background. There you go.
Yeah, it's wild. It's anyway, but that was so. That's why we like practical effects.
Practical effects, unlike those nympho women.
Yeah. These I've noticed that there don't seem to be any horror movies that are made for guys like me. Okay, we need to get off this.
Sounds like he needs to get off, is what it sounds like.
That's so true. So true. Away from everyone else, too. Ernst Cline. Log off, okay? Do some analog masturbation, you weirdo. Oh god. So back to we were talking about the special effects, right?
Yeah. So it's like they go to hard. People talked a lot of shit about the special effects of this movie when it came out, but I actually think that they're pretty good and they've aged pretty well as well. So.
I agree for the most part. This is an odd experience for me because I actually think that a lot of the CG is blended pretty well.
Yeah. There is a little bit of CG in there, but it's not too,
Yeah, it's well applied. It's in some good spots where they really needed it for the movie. Where it's just like, oh yeah, somebody like busting through a door, right? It's like, okay, a robot breaking a door open that's made of like huge amounts of metal. It's like, yeah, okay, of course you need to create something like that. But then it switches over to practical effects. It is visible, but it's not like it's not bad, right?
Yeah.
This is up there, in my opinion. This is up there with like Monk's gonna sigh. This is up there with Starship Troopers for use of special effects. Okay. This is like really good. It's one of the best examples I could see in the 90s. But the one problem I am seeing is that some of those close-ups of like the little like erector set toys that are moving around look like toys I played with when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm just like, I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, that kind of takes me out of it. But for the most part, they look fucking sick. Especially all the big set pieces are just like pieces of metal and bone with like sinews stretched over it, and it looks amazing. Yeah.
I think one of the things that this movie does really well with like it does like a good job of, I think, escalating the type of like shit that you see, where it's like a lot of the set pieces are like fairly normal, and then there's like the little erector set robots that kind of are scurrying around, and then at the end there's like the giant fucking like meat tank.
I think they call it like the Goliath monster or something like that. But, and like the the cyborg, like the humanoid ones, like I think it's there's the Russian ship captain guy, and I think there's another one. When they come out, like they actually look sick. Like they look like they look like they look like those like McFarlane toys, like just like the ones that you used to have as a kid, and it's like they nailed it, like the full size kind of thing. Like there's something about them like quite unsettling. They really have a really cool kind of I don't know, like they remind me of an early 2000s survival horror game. Like I think they really have a cool, like they're not too, I don't know, they're not too, I guess like robotic looking. They look like, they do look like, because the idea is that it's like this robot that is building these creatures out of a mix between like human viscera and other animals, and then pieces of machine and stuff, and it looks like it's trying to build an animal, a creature, as opposed to just trying to build like a robot or something like that. So a lot of them, like a lot of the smaller ones you see, are like really kind of insectoid, and then the bigger ones are kind of more like human-like. I think I can't remember what they call them. I think they call them like biomechanoids or some shit like that in the movie. But they're sick as hell. I like the way that they play with like the skulls in the movies. There's like a couple of characters that are like kind of cyborg or whatever, and they have like just like these like red lights coming out of like around their eyes. A lot of the cyborgs have these red lights for eyes that are really cool as well in the dark. But that is actually like one thing, that the movie is a very dark movie. The later half of it is so dark that sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on. I think something that's what a lot of people said about the movie when it first came out as well, which I think is a really justifiable criticism, because there were parts where I was just like, wait, like what's happening here, So
especially
but the red lights
here on a CRT monitor, like it's like I could see that being really hard to see. Luckily, with these updated copies, it becomes a lot easier. But there's definitely some dark rooms for sure.
Yeah.
I also especially when they're in like the bottom of the tanker with all the gas.
Yeah.
Like that room is like you can't tell what's going on in that room at all.
I like how many like speaking of like the design of like, especially you see a lot of the detail because they're sort of doing like a dissection on the Russian ship captain at some point in the movie, and they really like go in close on like all of the little details. Like one of his hands is like a gun built into it, and then he's got a robot arm that bursts out of his head at one point, like towards the end, like it like fakes out being dead about like 3 or 4 times during that scene, and just bursts back to life all of a sudden.
It looks so good. I like all of the stuff around the Russian captain just looks really good. I like totally agreeing. All of the body work that's done on it is just so cool. Donald Sutherland as a cyborg, fucking amazing. I love that so much.
He actually is he's just a great actor, like he delivers a great performance. Like him and Jamie Lee Curtis are really kind of the standout actors in this movie. Their performances both are incredible, especially so Donald Sutherland acting with the robot puppet sort of stuff. He's really good at like acting with this machine, like kind of this and that's like a thing in itself, right? He's not bouncing off another actor. It's like literally just like some puppetry or whatever, but he does a really good job of selling that. One of the other main characters, William Baldwin, he just like Baldwin. And especially in this movie, he just like he doesn't really sell his he's I think he's like an engineer or something like that is kind of thrust into this like unlikely hero role, but he's just really boring. He's probably the least interesting out of all of the cast, but he's obviously supposed to be kind of like the like the male lead sort of thing. But he like he has these like weak lines that he doesn't really kind of give you anything with them, and he just the movie would be totally fine without him in it. They could have used one of the other characters. They could have
Tico.
stepped one of the
Ironically better.
Actually, they could have.
Yeah.
They totally could have promoted one of the other background characters into the foreground, and I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, they could have used Hiko. Cliff Curtis is a great actor.
Hiko, especially like the way they kill, because like everyone in this movie feels like they got like a really dramatic, like valiant death where they got to do their thing.
Yeah. Then he just gets like swept off into the ocean. And it's just like, oh, yeah.
Hiko, a big wave came and he tried to save someone, and then he got caught in the wave and they didn't try to save him.
Yeah, that's like a thing, right? It's like a recurring theme in this movie is people not saving Hiko. And he like constantly is doing stuff to like, there's like all these scenes where it's like he's, doing something to help people out or whatever at great risk, and then, people are just like, all right, see you later. I guess aside from like the intro when he's first introduced and William Baldwin's character saves him, because he's I think he's like they drop the anchor on the ship on their own smaller ship and it's sinking and he like can't swim and he's drowning, which I think is like kind of ridiculous for like a dude like him to be a deckhand on a ship but not be able to swim. It's kind of like I don't know.
Yeah, kind of wild. I was like, I can't imagine working on a ship and not knowing how to swim. I could see that being a thing for like for a character that gets like a lot of screen time if you're really gonna like go into that, but doing that for like for somebody who's just like basically like second string cast and in like adding that little characterization is just so weird. I don't know why.
Yeah, especially as like literally like a Pacific Islander. It's kind of like very funny. It's like, okay, like, but maybe he's got some deep characterization that we missed out on. But yeah. So and I liked a couple little touches there. Like, so obviously we see he's got his face tattooed. He's got Mataora, which is like a traditional Maori, one of the many kind of like traditional face tattoos. And it's really good. It's probably one of the only, like, there's probably only a couple from films of this era or before that actually are really drawn correctly and like they actually look right and you can actually kind of read it and say like, okay, cool, this was done by someone that knew what they were doing, whatever. But also in that scene where he hurts his leg, I think it was when the anchor drops on him or something like that, like he hurts his leg or whatever, and they tear off his pants to see where the injury is, and he's got his thighs tattooed with puhoro as well, which is another traditional like thigh tattoo that I thought was really cool, because it's like you don't see too much of his skin under there, and it's like you only really see it briefly in like 2 shots, but that they included that as well, I thought was a really good really cool touch. Mm-hmm. And so like I was saying earlier, there were 2 guys that worked on this film, Gordon Toy and Ricky Manuel, who they're both traditional Maori tattooists, but they're also just kind of like they're carvers. They do what we call morako, which is like a traditional martial art sort of thing, and all that kind of stuff as well. They're just like these kind of cultural behemoths. And so they were responsible for both like all of the kind of like cultural consultancy stuff, like designing all his tattoos, and even the stuff that he wears. Like he has a large greenstone tiki necklace around his neck. That's like a real one that that Gordon had carved. And then he has a weapon as well. It's a kind of patu that we call a wahaika, and it's like kind of like a weird kind of like, you kind of use them like a mix between a club and a dagger sort of thing, but there's a couple scenes where he's showing like kind of, flexing with it to the robots. And so that's an actual real one as well, another one that Gordon had made. These weren't just like, like fake props or anything like that, which I thought was really cool. And so yeah, obviously they designed his tattoos as well. So they just like, they looked so legit. I thought it was really cool how they just included the ones on his legs as well. Interestingly enough, though, at the time, Cliff Curtis didn't actually have those tattoos himself, but he has since got his own like actual traditional, we call it torape was the whole thing, but it's like your whole like lower back, butt and thighs and stuff. He had that done by Gordon, who is one of the guys that worked on this film years later, which is kind of cool. But at this time in the movie, it was still just makeup. But yeah, I thought that was like just a cool way of like they didn't have to do that. Like that's you know a couple hours in a makeup chair for like 2 shots, probably less than a couple seconds on screen in total.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought like little things like that were really cool. And yeah, and also like having the authentic, like actual kind of props that he had as well. Then it was like, you know, it's not just like he's got some like, I don't know, like normally we see this shit in movies. They've got like some little like ooga booga ticky thing that looks like it's come out of like a Hawaiian gift shop and was like, you know, probably made in like China or some shit like that. To actually see a real one, it's like, oh shit, okay, like that's legit. And it's like, you know, he's wearing it like you normally would. It's you know, like the actual cord that it's attached to is like braided the right way and all that kind of stuff. Which
that's some wild attention to detail. That's cool.
Yeah. Like I wonder if it was because I know that Cliff and Gordon have been friends for a really long time. I don't know if it's like from before the movie or not, but I wonder if he had kind of said like, hey, look, I'm gonna, you know, like if I'm gonna play this character, I would really like to, you know, maybe get some people in on it because I can't imagine, I don't know, like these guys like, you know, John Bruno or whatever, just of their own volition being like, we're going to take this bit part character and really go like, you know, all in. We're going to, like they wouldn't even know, like they wouldn't know what the details to include would be. Right. But yeah, so yeah, I thought all that kind of stuff was pretty cool.
It's like, I do think everyone who was working on the movie, like genuinely, it seemed like and this is something that you can't always 100% tell from like watching the movie after the fact, right? But it seemed like everyone there like wanted to be there and like gave a shit about what was happening in a way.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because then you see people talking about it, like you see Jamie Lee Curtis talking about it since, and she's like, "Oh, that's like the greatest piece of shit that I ever," you know, like she like hates it. And
oh no, really?
Yeah. No, she does. She fucking hates it. She's talked about it in a couple of interviews, just being like it was terrible from start to finish, which I think is like a bit unfair. Like, and she says she doesn't credit that to anyone in particular or anything like that. She just really hates the movie. Whereas I think that like it's obviously not an amazing movie. It has some ridiculous stuff in it. There's a lot of dialogue that's a bit ridiculous. There's characters making pretty ridiculous choices. You know, but all up, I think it's actually like I would say it's definitely unfairly maligned. I think there's a lot to like here. If you're into this genre of film, you know, if you like stuff like Deep Rising, Event Horizon, I mean, there's so many.
You like Waterworld, another unfairly maligned movie.
Yeah, there's like, I think there's a lot to like here. Even if you're just into like practical special effects and you want to see some cool stuff, I think it's up there with like Event Horizon in terms of just like giving you some really interesting kind of imagery and set design and all that kind of stuff. There's some really cool stuff to see there, even if you just like you're not paying attention to the story or anything.
They really did kind of lean into that, like what they tried to like think it through. I think what the ship would look like if there's a electricity monster trying to create like some shit. And I don't know, it looks fucking amazing. I you know, you get these like rooms that are just full of like electrical cords and like machinery just kind of operating, and it looks really cool.
I really like that. Yeah, I like it. It reminds me a little bit of an Alien, how the ship, like all of the cables and everything kind of like the alien design itself kind of mimicked those things. So it was like you were never sure, is that just like a pipe or is it the xenomorph's tail? And I think that it's really interesting when you consider that in this ship, everything it's all it's all electrical equipment, it's all pipes, it's all tubes, it's all these kind of things.
Right.
And
that
these
is
are the
sort
things
of thematically similar to Alien in a way, because Alien, in terms of like the work that like H.R. Geiger did on it, like a lot of that is like about the synthesis of like biological and mechanical stuff. And this, and like, it's obviously not better than Alien, but this has like a lot of that same through lines through it in like a way that are much more like explicit, where it's like, this is literally. Literally
there are moments that do remind me of things like Tetsuo the Iron Man and things like that, especially like visually. But like if you imagine being these crew members and you're moving through this environment that is literally made out of everything that the monster is, and kind of it creates itself through all these things, and it like this really like this hostile jungle sort of thing where it's like anything could be part of this alien creature or anything like that. I think that the set design becomes a really interesting character, like it becomes part of that
authentic it is to like Russian naval ships of the time.
Apparently I think it's an American ship. I think it's a decommissioned American ship that they dressed up. So I don't know, there's probably some nerd out there that like, will be able to tell that it's the wrong one because the fucking the pipes are on the left instead of the right or something like that, but no, but I think they do a really good job of dressing up the environment. And actually, like I think that maybe the darkness of the film also kind of like in some places helps, but in other places I guess kind of hinders that. Like you don't get to see too much of exactly what's happening.
Yeah. And I mean that really was especially in the 90s, just like a staple of the genre is like keep things pretty dark. And don't get me wrong, Hollywood's taken it to a whole nother level these days, but but like it was usually used pretty effectively. Like I think that comparisons between this and Alien and Aliens are like pretty good in a lot of ways, just because like this is like if Alien was less curated as like as a piece. It feels like if this movie went through some more editing and like just like probably had a bigger budget, it probably would have been good, like good. And it is. I want to defend this movie because I do think it is legitimately pretty good. Like
one thing that I really enjoyed about it, and like I think you are kind of right, Tim, that like some of the writing is like not necessarily the best in the world, and some of the actors are also not necessarily the best in the world acting. But what I think they really nail with like the performances is they have a really great like sort of team chemistry where every member of the team has like a clearly defined relationship with every other member, and like the way they behave like towards each other does like seem pretty consistent. And there's a lot of moments where it's interesting and it like has like some like it's just genuinely like entertaining just to see the like them tell Woods like, yeah, shut your fucking mouth, you're fine, when he's got the nails in him for like 20 minutes of the movie. It's very funny.
I do love that. Yeah, he literally gets shot with nails, and it's like, oh, you baby, and they pull it out of him. It's like
because he deserves it too. I guess like they set that up of like him just being an asshole when he leaves like Hiko. He's like later.
I really like when these kind of movies get really into those kind of crew dynamics, right? Like the kind of the interactions between them. I think it is something that it's hard to pull off, I think, and it's not really ever really, I don't know, like there's a lot of movies like this, and a lot of the time they don't nail it too well. I do really like, there's a short movie, it's it was written by I think it was written by, what's his name, the guy that did Akira, Katsuhiro Otomo. It's a short anime as part of an anthology. The anthology is called Memories, and the short itself is called Magnetic Rose. And it's very Event Horizon. It's very Virus. It's about it's like a corporate freighter investigating a distress signal, the story, like it's supposed to be a derelict space station, but they get there and it's not quite derelict, and it's like it is that haunted house kind of thing, but the house is a space station, and it's this kind of, it's like this haunted house with a ghost, where it's like the ghost is the AI that is this she's like this old, I think she was like an opera star, and she is kind of fixated on this period in time in her memory, trying to recreate that in this space station, like well past the time. Like I can't remember if they know exactly how much time has passed, but it's really short. It's really cool. It's visually really cool. The story's really cool. And it's a couple years previous to this. I think it's like early to mid 90s that it came out. But it's really cool to watch. But and also the crew has a really cool dynamic, like it's like, oh, these are actually characters that like know each other, and they have, like they have relationships with each other, and they have like a kind of like, there's a dynamic at play here. It's not just like, here are 4 or 5 interchangeable kind of, like insert, like whatever is, are they salvage dudes? Are they fucking miners? Whatever, it's like, they're not just, they couldn't be anyone. They're these guys, which I think is cool.
Yeah,
and I think we got a little bit of that in Virus, but it's, we didn't quite get there.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think it's like huge in movies when I agree with you that it's like huge in movies when they really do define the characters, especially for horror movies like this.
Yeah.
So you don't just have, so last week we did Dawn of the Dead.
God.
by Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, which is garbage. If you haven't seen it, don't bother. But the in the movie, there's just this moment where there's an influx of people into the mall, and I cannot name half of them.
I can't name half of
name half the main cast.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. They're just people, Which is like,
they do that. They do this a lot in horror movies when they like feel like they need to kill someone, but they don't want to kill anyone who's like important to the story. It's what it feels like.
I think like a lot of these movies, especially horror movies, they'll just have like characters will be shorthand for like an archetype, right? It's like, oh, you got the stoner, you got the horny guy, you got the jock, and it's like, that's it. Like the character, you don't need to know any more about these characters. You just like, that's what you that's what you get. Whereas I think it is interesting they get a little bit further than that. It tends to be like heist movies and things like that really get into that a little bit more, like the kind of like Ocean's 11 kind of thing like that, which I think can be kind of interesting. But in general, I think that a lot of horror movies just lean on, I guess, like what they expect the audience to already know about certain kinds of characters or people, just like leaning on stereotypes pretty hard.
That's really true. Agreed. And I do think that this movie kind of got away from this at least, but it's when I don't know, there's so many of these movies where they just end up doing like not even the bare minimum. Right? Like where they'll be like, here's a character, here's a little bit of why you should be invested in them, and it's not really fleshed out enough. Because like I'm thinking about one character specifically from Dawn of the Dead right now, right? Yep. There's this woman that shows up, and her whole character is that she's horny.
Oh yeah.
She has, and that is showed by her having sex with somebody one time.
Wow. Yeah.
And then she gets no other character development and dies, and that's it.
Yeah. That's
there's a few characters like that. There's also the lady whose character arc is she has a dog.
There's the character she has a dog. There's the character she drives a truck and smokes. There's the gay guy. He's got more of an arc at least. They're like, at least they say like, they play piano and is an atheist.
They developed his character enough for them to do gay bashing in the movie. That's why they developed.
Exactly.
Oh, great. See, it's like they show characters engaged in some form of sin so that their punishment is justified, right? They're like, look at these fornicators. Now Jason's gonna cut their heads off because they deserve it.
Cabin in the Woods was really a good teaching moment for that, right?
yeah.
I feel like most audiences may not have been super aware of that happening in movies,
Yeah.
but that and Scream really did a good job of elucidating that for viewing audiences.
Yeah,
Well, like,
totally.
yeah. Go ahead.
I think like we got a little bit, in Virus, we got a little bit more than you'd usually expect.
Yeah.
But like I did, there was like the scene where they're asking, okay, if we get this 3 million from the salvage, what are you doing with it? And they're all kind of like, saying what they would do, and you get like a little bit of like, oh, okay, this is what this person wants. Like I think Hiko said that he wants to go home and start a kura kaupapa, which is just like a full Maori immersion school that is like, they're generally kind of like, it's like a normal school, but there's like a lot of more kind of like cultural education and even like, political kind of stuff, which kind of shows you like, oh, okay, he's not just some guy that like, like it's like, oh, he's got like, he's got something in mind, like he's got something bigger that he wants to work towards or whatever, which I thought was cool. And also, actually, side note, his name is a Maori word for electricity, and they talk a lot about electricity in this movie, and electricity and like energy and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was kind of funny.
Interesting. That is interesting.
But yeah. There's a couple little things like that. But I thought that it did better than most in terms of developing these characters a little bit. Even Everton, the captain of the ship, you see this. So when you first meet this character, they're basically talking about how terrible the job they're on is at the moment and that they're not going to get paid much. This is before finding the salvage ship, and the captain is literally putting his gun in his mouth. Like he's like about to end it all, like,
Everton has
done in
so
such
many
a comedic way.
so many great moments. He's just so fun to watch throughout the entire
movie. He is a great, and he's great at this character. Just like, I mean, he really nails that kind of vibe whenever he's playing it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
just like dollar store Captain Ahab. Like he knows it too.
I think like they call him, one of the characters refers to him as being like, they call him like crazy like a fox, and that's exactly what he's like in this movie. Like he's deranged, but he has this like, his end goal is like self-preservation and like his own personal success or whatever like that, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there,
even having his head
including trying to bargain with this alien intelligence to the point that he gets subsumed by it. But but I thought he really killed it as that character.
Donald Sutherland is just such a joy to watch. I can't think of a single thing I've seen him in that I didn't like. He's just so good.
Yeah, he's been all over the place over the years. He's like done everything from like the Hunger Games back to like MASH like the Italian Job and all that kind of stuff. And he's he's
my
just
personal
consistently
favorite?
bringing the goods. What's that?
My personal favorite is Kate Bush's music video.
Oh,
the Kate Bush music video.
Oh, hell yeah!
Cloudbursting.
Oh, right.
The one about the Book of Sleep and like orgons. That's a whole fucking that's a whole
podcast
topic.
Itself, yeah.
Seriously. Kate Bush, a goat. Donald Sutherland, goat.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Both of them goated with the sauce.
Absolutely.
No, he's great. And yeah, like we were saying earlier, Jamie Lee Curtis does a really good job. You couldn't tell that she wasn't having fun.
That's because she's a professional.
Yeah. And I think she's said before in interviews that she doesn't like horror movies. Like she doesn't like any of the Halloween movies or anything like that.
That's so wild.
Yeah. But she has a gift for playing, like a character in distress and a character that is, but like even
this thing about her relationship too with like it's interesting watching the movie and seeing the relationship that she has with the Russian like head of science on the ship, like the only survivor. You can see their relationship sort of like emerge throughout the course of the film. Where, like one like it starts with like the Russian I forget her name, but she's like
Nadia, I think.
Nadia, yeah. So she's like terrified, and like completely in shock at the beginning of the movie, and is like losing her shit, and like fucking Jamie Lee Curtis, whatever her name, I can never remember characters' names, is calming her down, and then like that role like completely reverses like right at the end of the movie where she's like losing her shit.
Yeah.
Nadia's calling her down.
It is interesting that they have these two both like strong female roles in this movie where it's like,
yeah,
you know, they're both, it's like double final girl kind of thing, you know, like, yeah. So I think that is another interesting dynamic, which, you know, you don't really see too often in a lot of films like this, especially not from this era.
True.
And, you know, it's like, it's,
we love to see women supporting women in in media. And you know, it's interesting. Nadia's character is kind of, she loses her husband, right? That's her whole thing. Is at the beginning they don't reveal it until a little further in the movie, but her whole energy here is my husband is dead. Everyone I've known on this boat is dead. I think I'm the only surviving person from this vessel, and I have a gun.
Because they show it like right
to where she ends up at the end when she's like sacrificing herself to you know, to save the final survivors of the other crew. It's a real journey. Yeah.
I think they show like right at the start, they show like, I think her husband was on the satellite or the space station, and she was down on the ship, and they were like playing chess together across the thing. And it was like kind of like hinted that there was a little bit of romance there, but it wasn't like, you know, like it wasn't really spelled out. So I think that's like a cool little touch that they had there.
I think I'm remembering this slightly differently.
Oh, really?
The captain, was it Captain Alexei? Was the captain of the ship, and that they were supposed to be married, if I remember correctly.
Something like that.
It doesn't really matter, but yeah. And so that's why it was so impactful when
because I figured that it was like, because all the guys on the space station died as well. I figured that was what she was talking about. But okay, all right.
Yeah, because then she goes and he's laying on the table as a cyborg.
Like reaches out to her.
Yeah. And he grabs her arm, showing that he has lost himself, and then is.
Well, maybe there was an unexplored B plot there with the astronaut.
There was something weird. You're right, because I do remember that weird moment from the. Well, whatever. It's not really.
She's getting around, and you know what? Good for her.
Girl boss.
It is kind of a girl boss movie in a few. Like I also like how they kind of have like what's his name? The like Marine Navy weapons specialist guy. Is like because like there's like a character that splits off from the group. Let me look up the fucking
Richie.
I've got
Richie bugs out.
Absolutely.
Like they have like this whole thing where it's like he's out of there, and like it seems like he's just planning on saying screw this, I'm leaving, you know. Then he comes back to like there's a lot of like characters who have this self-sacrificial arc in the movie to help the final two characters survive, and not Hiko.
Oh god. You know, luckily Cliff Curtis went on to make a lot of other media after this, including
he's made a lot of movies.
A somewhat popular TV show recently, also involving horror elements. Fear the Walking Dead.
Oh, is he?
That's actually the first. I think that might have been the first place I saw him, was watching that.
He's been in so many things over the years. The kind of joke down here is that he is the man of indeterminate ethnicity, and that whenever Hollywood calls, they're like, we need, you know, like he could be Latino, he's been Asian, he's been, you know, like all these kind of things. And it's just like, You know, like he's just like they're just like he's not white, but he's not black. Like he's a mysterious third thing, you know. Which I think is the thing that a lot of Polynesian actors get kind of put in those
I
roles.
believe it. Yeah, I mean, you know, and that's American media, right?
Yeah.
I guess kind of world media too, but American media does it a lot. Yeah.
He's been in some bangers over the years. I haven't seen Avatar or any shit like that, but he's in that. He's one that I really like that he was in is Whale Rider. It's probably one of the more famous New Zealand films. Just like it's kind of like an adaptation of a story by a famous Maori author, Witi Ihamaira, and it's like based on a lot of like folk stories and stuff, and it's like a really, really amazing movie about this young girl who kind of like defies the kind of rigid, I guess like gendered expectations of her tribe to kind of take up the mantle of this kind of revered ancestor that from their particular hapu, and it's based on like real stories and like actual traditions and stuff. But it's like I would say probably one of the best movies that is actually like an actual depiction of what it is like living in like small Maori communities like outside of the cities and stuff like this. Like this movie just like nails it, as well as just being a really good movie. I think it won a bunch of international film festival awards and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's a really great one. It's I don't know, like when I first saw it, I wondered if foreigners would kind of understand some of the kind of like, I guess like the cultural cues and stuff, but I think that it reads pretty well. Just when you're like looking at, I guess, like a lot of the more, I guess, the relatable struggles of like, like this young girl that is being told that this is going to be her future, and she says like, no, I'm going to do this or whatever, but then she ultimately kind of like vindicates herself and gets the approval of her tribe and all that kind of stuff. But he's in that as well, and he fucking kills it in that. What else is he in? He's been in Once Were Warriors, which is like, everyone loves that movie, but I fucking hate it. It's another New Zealand movie that is basically just like, it's that movie alone has probably done like more harm to, I would say, the cultural perception of Maori than any other single piece of media ever. Like it's so bad. Yeah, it's fucking wild. And it sucks as well because it was like, it's like Maori director and writer and all this kind of stuff, but it's just like the most like ultimate like self-hating, like poverty porn kind of bullshit. One that's actually interesting to those of us that dabble in a little politics. He did a movie called Muru, like Muru, which was actually based on real life events in which a bunch of people, including a friend of mine, were actually arrested when it was like a rural community that was raided by the police, their like special tactics group. Basically they were convinced that this small community were terrorists and that they were plotting to like fucking spark a revolution and kill the prime minister and stuff like that. But it was really just like, so there's like this one particular tribe, Tuhoi, that are like famously kind of like they keep to themselves, and they like, despite colonization and stuff like that, they live in this area that is just like a misty valley, and they just have always kind of kept to themselves. So they kind of like held out against a lot of the kind of, I would say, like cultural degradation brought on by colonization. So they used to run these like boot camps, and there's a famous activist, Tama Iti, who was actually at the symposium that I was at the other week with these same guys that worked on this film. So it's all relevant. He was there as well. He was actually he was one of the guys that was arrested here as well, and him and another guy that I know, Amrangi, and they were so they would run these little kind of boot camps, and it would be about teaching like traditional knowledge, and also just like things like hunting and gathering and all this kind of stuff, with the intention to be like, we can teach young people to like live self-sufficiently and all this kind of stuff. But also they were like reading radical leftist literature. They were reading like, you know, like fucking Ho Chi Minh. They were reading Frantz Fanon. They were, you know, like all the good stuff. So, you know, they got on a couple lists. They were like, this is a, you know, the government thought they were a radical group, that they were trying to, you know, do some terrorism. They ultimately were vindicated. The government apologized and all this kind of stuff. But
whoa, the government apologized?
That's like complete. Like
well,
I'm like, oh
like,
yeah, this is totally relatable until the moment where someone admitted fault for something happening.
But it was they still like, they all still serve time and everything like that. But there was, so they it was actually a far more liberal government years later that actually kind of was like, sorry, our bad. But that didn't come with any real meaningful kind of like reparations or anything like that.
Yeah, that's familiar again.
Okay, we'll bring it back.
But, yeah. So that's another good one that Cliff Curtis has been in. I mean, he's been in so many over the years that like I could probably just keep going. But that would be the one that I would that's a pretty recent one that I'd recommend that people check out. That and Whale Rider, I'd say the standouts. But yeah.
Not Fear the Walking Dead. I understand. No,
I haven't seen, like, I literally haven't watched any Walking Dead anything. I kind of burned out on zombie stuff a little while back. I just like, it was everywhere, you know, like every movie that was coming out.
Yeah, we really did have a fucking zombie overdrive there for a while.
Yeah.
It was going really nuts for a minute. It was like a reaction to the vampire moment that happened, you know.
Well, yeah, I think that, you know, there's like that thing where it's like horror movies are always like a reaction to like the, I guess, like the zeitgeist, right? You know, whatever's happening at the time, like whatever the kind of cultural frustrations or whatever are, then, you know, these horror movies kind of react to that. And there's a lot of stuff to be said, like even by people like George Romero himself, talking about how you know, like these were like zombie movies were about like refugees and like these kind of like these other people that were coming to like take everything and all this kind of stuff. And you see that popping up, you know, like when we've had like various refugee crises in Europe, or when we've had like, you know, migrant caravans coming up in America, like that kind of thing. And you know, we get these zombie movies popping up, which I think is actually interesting if we look back at Virus and this kind of like the way that it's like, it's this haunted house movie, but it's also kind of like infused with this like tech paranoia kind of thing that was like a big thing in the late 90s, you know, like they were
true.
There were so many like these kind of like techno thriller kind of horror, not necessarily always horror, but sometimes, you know, just stuff like hackers and all, even like the Matrix and shit like that. It was all coming out around this time. And I
mean, Y2K was like
exactly.
right on the doorstep. I get that. Yeah.
And
I think it's funny because looking back, like Y2K seems so like comedic now. But like as it was coming up, people were fucking terrified.
I know, there was like, I remember in school, like, you know, having like school assemblies where they were like, what are we going to do if, you know, like just all our computers stop working, and, you know, like just things like that. And it ended up being nothing. And I mean, it's not nothing for nothing. Like, I think a lot of people are under the impression that just the clocks ticked over and nothing happened because it was all just kind of a, you know, a big joke anyway. But there was actually like, I
got in a whole ass argument with a coworker about that, who is literally a guy who works in IT and has been working in IT for like a decade. And he's like, it's fake. And I'm like, motherfucker, have you met any of the people who like actually worked on it?
No, it was like legitimately a thing. Like like, and there were people that were like working around the clock to deploy these updates, to basically everything that people had, like anything that was running on Windows or Mac or Linux or anything like that. They had to, like just, deploy these, like, all these updates and stuff. So it's like, because of these unsung heroes, nothing happens. But,
because of these
so it is
wages.
I know, and it is kind of,
yeah.
it's kind of sad thinking about, like, everyone just thinks it was a joke, and it's like only because of the hard work of a bunch of like a bunch of
it's weird because, like,
IT guys.
It's weird because it was like, in some ways, like, some people, there definitely were like, as with any sort of major, like, crisis, there were a fair share of, like, grifters who are like,
absolutely,
just buy all the canned food you need from me and you'll be fine.
We're gonna revert to, like, Beanie Baby based currency. Like,
I'd be rich.
Yeah.
Let me. I still got those shits. Let me tell you, they're cute as hell, and I love them.
You have any of the rare ones?
Yeah.
No, I have none of them. I have like some allegedly rare ones, but if I
think they were all allegedly rare, right? Like,
exactly, right?
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like people were like, "Oh yeah, here's a rare one," and then like you find out what the specific thing that actually made the rare ones rare is, like some misprint, and it's like, oh okay. So like there wasn't actually rare ones; it was just like there's some like weird misprints and shit. I don't know. Shit got overblown hugely.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Personally, I've gone all in on Funko Pops. That's what my entire life savings is.
You and Colin, yeah.
I don't think I've managed to buy into anything like that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like all those things have kind of sailed me by. But I don't think I just haven't found one that is like the right shape or particular like plastic smell or something like that yet.
I get it. Not everyone sees like a little like beanbag toy and says, "This is the cutest thing I've ever seen," and I want a lot of them. Some people, they saw like a mechanical monster wrapped in fur, and they were like, "Well, that's what I'm going to collect now. I'm going to collect Furbies and make them into like horrifying monsters." And, like people got all sorts of there's all sorts of things, right?
This is kind of a Furby coded movie that we do. Like,
isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah. Like if you take the fur off a Furby and it looks exactly like one of the creatures from Virus. 100%.
Yeah, this definitely isn't me coping with not being able to get a Furby when I was a kid.
I had one.
I remember there was like one kid at our school had one. It was like, it was a big deal.
I had a Furby, but I was scared of it because it would turn on by itself in the middle of the night. I think that was like a common problem with the electronics on them or some shit, but it like scared the shit out of me.
It would, right?
I can see it being freaky, especially if it starts talking to you. It's just like, it's like, feed me. No.
Well, it's like also it's feed me, and also the sound of like 8,000 motors,
little servos whirring away. It's like you're not moving, but you're making sound. What are you doing inside there? Are you creating a new form?
Mining Bitcoin. Yeah. Mining Bitcoin in there,
they're probably, because they have like the newer Furbies now. They probably do have like an Internet of Things for mining Bitcoin at this moment.
Oh yeah,
probably true. Yeah.
Anything else we got to say about the movie? Any last major concerns we want to address?
I did love the little fake out ending, right? Like when they like everything. I think there's like some explosion or something like something happens on the ship or whatever.
Yeah, then, so like they have like the ejector seat, right? And they launched themselves with the rocket propelled ejector seat off of the boat, and Richie had lined up a little cord detonate a bunch of thermite grenades and explosives behind them
That's
to sink
right.
the boat, and it was the huge fucking explosion.
Yeah. And then there's a scene where Hiko is lost out at sea, earlier in the movie, just unceremoniously fucking yeeted out into the ocean. And then so there's a scene with Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and she's like on, like Titanic style on like a piece of floating wood or whatever. And she looks over and she sees Hiko's on there as well. And she calls out to him, and she pulls back his head, and his face is just ripped off, and all you can see is a small part of his brow tattoo, his tifana. You can see like just to say that it's him or whatever, and he's dead. But then he like comes to life for a second and like lurches for her, and then she wakes up, and it's like, oh no, she's on the helicopter and everything's fine, and it's all good, and which I think is like just like one of those. Like this scene really contributes nothing to the film, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like a 20-second jump scare bit that is just like there's nothing here, there are no steps forward or back for any of the characters here.
Yeah, the movie literally ends
really
like 2 minutes after that.
Yeah.
Like it's fun, but as I've grown older, I've really come to like really like, when you get used to these tropes and stuff, and then you're just kind of like, oh, come on. Like, like that was pretty garbage. They could have, it would have been more interesting if they had let that ride out, if they had let Virus Hiko attack her, and then, because then, when she wakes up, she's in this helicopter, and William Baldwin is being like, oh, no, you're okay, or whatever like that. If, it returned to the back of the front of the movie when Hiko's in the water and William Baldwin jumps in to save him, but this time he's jumping in to save Jamie Lee Curtis from Hiko. That would have been, and then ride out the movie like that, I think would have been there would be an actual death, an actual end for Hiko, and and no bullshit fake out that doesn't add anything to the movie.
Yeah,
but hey, I'm not a fancy Hollywood director. What do I know?
I have to imagine that what happened was that, rather than that being written into the script, that like there was some producer somewhere who was like, you can't have Hiko come back to life and like, kill both of them. That would be like a downer ending. So we need to like create like a happy ending, right? And so as like a fuck you, John Bruno was just like, oh well, we'll just go ahead and record that and have it be a bad dream. And then fell backwards into a pool with both middle fingers.
It may have even been like a test audiences type of thing, where you've filmed a few different versions.
True. True.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been pretty unsatisfying just for the thermite to go off and then for her to wake up in the helicopter as well. Like there would just like there needs to be something to bridge that, an additional moment of drama. But I always feel like those it was just a dream things. It just like
definitely
there's nothing there. Well, there's very few cases where you get something from that, and it's like this wasn't David Lynch. We're not getting anything out of the stream here.
No. Also, I guess one time that the CG did not look good is the ejector seat. Ejector seat did look bad. And also them flying out, I was like, they're just gonna hit the water and die. Like what's happening here? But little things like that. The ending mid. I'll go out on a limb and say that the ending pretty mid. The rest of the movie leading up to it very cool, but
it's really only just like that last little bit though. Like they could have really they could have done more with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh well, can't all be winners.
That's true. It's still gonna get a positive review on Letterboxd from me. So that's all I gotta say.
I'd say it's a watch. I'd say pretty easy. It's a watch.
I guess definitely a watch. If you're into like that genre of film, if you're into physical effects, or you just want to see some crazy stuff, some some interesting images moving in sequence on a screen, then I reckon there's something there for a lot of people. I think unfairly maligned, I think, is going to be my kind of word of the day for that one.
There's a lot of movies that we cover that are either unfairly or extremely fairly or not maligned enough.
Not maligned
like
enough.
Zack Snyder, like the last one we fucking I guess it's gonna be 2 episodes ago when this fucking Dawn of the Dead broke my ass.
That shit sucked.
Look at the Letterboxd reviews after that and seeing that like a full 1/5 of the people who watched that movie gave it 4 or 5-star reviews on Letterboxd.
I remember watching it when it first came out, and like as a teenager, and being like, "Holy fuck, this rules," and then watching it again later as an adult, and just being like, "What's here? Like, what is here to like? What's here that hasn't been
Down
done?"
with the Sickness.
Yeah, I know the Richard Cheese cover.
Cheese.
Yeah,
I got it. It's definitely a similar experience, except you're gonna love this. The first time I watched it, it was after Christmas. The morning after Christmas, I watched it with my whole family at my sister's house.
Oh yeah,
it was that was a fucked experience, just absolutely wild. It's like
when there's like the zombie baby scene and stuff.
Yes, early in the day, like before noon.
Yeah,
watching that with the sun. There's like it's sunny because we were down in California.
Oh, it must have been even fucking harder to see any if like the lighting's already that blown out and there's glare on the TV or watching
really
it.
Is. That's what I remember. I remember that so boldly how blown out the lighting is in that movie. It's like,
I'm so excited to complain about this movie again when we record the next episode, which will air before this episode.
Right. I'm like, we'll be complaining about it a 4th time when we record the Sucker Punch episode, which is...
That's so true because they'll be about about Snyder, and we're gonna be yelling.
I haven't watched Sucker Punch since it first came out, but I've seen a lot of people saying recently that they actually have a really quite a fond spot for it. So interested to see how that one goes.
Yeah, I don't want to go too into it until the actual episode, but I will say that Sucker Punch is a really really fucking disgusting film about how women need to overcome their natural instincts to tear each other down and just let things happen to them.
Wow. Interesting. I've seen a couple different, like, I haven't really looked too much into them, but I've seen a couple different takes over the years of people being like, yeah, that's the case, and then other people being like, no, there's like a secret, like there's a secret other reading.
Yeah, those people are getting being paid by Zack Snyder is what I have to say.
by Jack Biter.
Zack Snyder has a really specific sort of energy that he likes to bring to his films, and that is incel.
Him and Ernst Cline, right?
Yeah, exactly, right.
So we don't have any fucking mail or anything to read in this one. Let's go through. Let me go through. Woo. Sorry, there's a giant thunderstorm right outside. There's a big lightning.
Oh my god. I thought maybe you like hit a soundboard noise or something. Like, holy shit.
Whoa. Effects.
No, and it might not even
since we're on a call, I could probably do one of those. Hold on.
I don't think it's gonna get worked.
Whoa.
Jesus, it's so loud. But
the tool will fix it.
Hopefully. You can reach us at edgelordpod@gmail.com. You can call us at 920-350-EDGE, 920-350-3343 for the edging hotline to leave us a voicemail. You can find Brian at Brian's places. You can find me at my places. Tim, where can people find you?
You can find me over I'm most often on Twitter at Dread Conquest. I'm also on Blue Sky at Dread Conquest. Or YouTube and Twitch at Conquest of Dread. But I'm not too active over there these days. my only real thing to plug is that I've also been working on a tabletop RPG for a little while, and it's like really close to being released. So if you want to check out that, it's go to Twitter and check out @DarkRPG2000. And yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Nice. How's Red Planet been doing?
Oh yeah, I mean Red Planet. I always forget about that because I do it every week. That's the other thing. That's the most consistent thing actually. So every week we do a Red Planet stream, which is it's like a politics stream where we like talk about what's going on, like in current events, but also we try to get a new guest on every time talking about what they've been up to. And it's usually people like union organizers or people that are like, from various kind of broadly leftist organizations that are doing stuff. Trying to focus more on the community side of things, and like people that are actually doing stuff out in the real world, less like just, I don't know, the Twitter drama stuff that you see a lot of.
Right.
So, yeah. We try and keep it like a positive thing of like, this is stuff that people are actually out there doing, and these are things that you can get involved with and things like that. So that's what Red Planet's about. You can find us over on red_planet_TV at Twitter. And obviously from there, you can get links to like the streams and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'll post some links for everything in the description as well. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me here. It's been fun.
Hell yeah.
We had fun too.
In the meantime, cool. Dear listeners, I hope you have a great whatever time you're listening to this as well, and stay tuned, and we'll continue bringing you some fucking movies that came out.
Some quality edging.
We'll talk about some movies.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise! These motherfuckers talking about movies again. It's like every week with these people.